This is a special How to Handicap instructional video, how to handicap early season college football. Marco, give us the first key factor.
First key factor is you've got to look at what the team is bringing back. You got to look at the nucleus of the team, how many returning starters, and who those starters are. Top key is obviously the quarterback. He's the guy that drives the car. Next you want to look at, for me, is the offensive line. Offensive line, very important in both pro and college football.
Now that's something the typical average batter doesn't focus on as much. The quarterback for sure, but the offensive line is usually under-considered. You consider it the second most important.
I do, and I have a saying, and you guys that know me, I've said it 100 times. If you don't have a good offensive line, it's the equivalent of trying to drive a car with a flat tire. You just can't do it. It's not smooth, and you're not going to go far. So look for teams at the beginning of the season, and this again, we're talking like the very first week, second week, because they're going to have a leg up over teams that are rebuilding and plugging new players in.
All right, so let me ask this question. Is it that the offensive line is so important? It's probably a combination. I'll give you a hint what the answer is going to be. Or is it the fact that inexperience on the offensive line is worse than inexperience, or is more detrimental than inexperience at cornerback or at wide receiver?
Right, because if you're in a passing play, if you make a mistake on the offensive line, your quarterback's on the ground. There is no pass. Okay, so play's over, and you can have a turnover and a cheap touchdown the other way. So yeah, it's very important on the running game. If you don't have the blocking schemes
but hold on a second. We know it's important. The question I'm asking is how much of that importance, because we're going to do a how to handicap mid-season college football in October. We're going to do a how to handicap late season in November. Are you going to say the offensive line in October? Are you going to say it in November? And if not, what's special about it early in the season?
What's special about it early in the season is the continuity factor. These guys already
That's what I'm saying. So the experience, the continuity on the offensive line is more important than continuity at cornerback.
Absolutely.
Okay, I agree with that. What's number two?
Another thing that you got to look at is coaches. Every year there's going to be coaching changes in the college ranks. This is a sport. What have you done for me now? You're out the door. When you have new coaches come in, one thing you've got to be careful of is there's always hoopla, expectations, and an example that I'll cite that was probably in recent years one of the most notable is the Michigan program. Storied program, winning tradition. Lloyd Carr was there.
We got it, Michigan. We got it. Go ahead.
You got it. Rich Rodriguez comes in, did well at West Virginia, so expectations were high. The problem, and people, bet Michigan out of the gate thinking Rodriguez would do the same there that he did at Michigan or at West Virginia. Problem is, when you go to another school, you are inheriting the old coach's players. Your first recruiting class is not going to have an impact your first year there.
Okay, so we prepped on this, and there's a key distinction. You make a great point. One is there's disruption with a new coach no matter what. All disruption is not created equal. Some of the disruption, and you make the great point, does the personnel on the field match up with the new system? In extreme cases, if you ran the option and then you're going to a pro set, you don't have the quarterback. So as you examine this new coach and how disruptive the change is going to be, that's one of the key factors, which is the player personnel. I love that concept. I also love, just in general, looking to fade the first-year coaches, because it's a combination of a disruption, which is a negative to performance, plus the hoopla, which is a positive to expectation. Negative performance, positive expectation, that equals value fading.
When you say value, let's elaborate. Value is that Vegas is going to put a higher tariff on those teams because of public perception that they're going to be
because the public's betting, the market likes them.
Right.
All right, so fading new coaches, especially if there's been a disruption in the system and the player personnel. Okay, you got a third big one.
There's a second part to the coaches.
Oh, go ahead.
You've got new coaches, but you've also got second-year coaches every season, because now you go back and look at those guys to what they did the first year. And what we just said is more often than not, they're going to underachieve. just because of the change in that.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you talk about a new coach, you always hear about the 5-year plan. So if that is true, they're going to underperform in year one. The public reacts to what happened. You know, the public's always
Because
late
they're
to
betting their money. That's something we keep talking about. This isn't reading 3 and 8 or anything and thinking, oh, that's a abstract concept. It's everyone that bet, any alums that bet them every game, won 3 times and lost 8 times.
What happens is the second year now, you're into the second year of the program, you've got a continuity factor, they're buying into the system, they're more comfortable with it, and if the coach was the right hire, he should improve in year 2, and there should be value with that coach as they improve because they're going to be an undervalued commodity in the Vegas market.
It's the flip side, expectation lower, performance higher. I love it. I love symmetry.
Buy low, sell high. It's the same in football.
All right. Anything else?
One thing to be careful of as you're migrating through the month of September is you've got to be careful with statistics because they're going to be not true numbers. Remember that in the month of September, a lot of teams schedule what we call cupcakes, little sisters of the poor, whatever metaphor you want to use. They do it for 2 reasons. They want to get those wins under their belt early in the season, pad their stats, but it's also almost like an exhibition for them because they get a chance to play some second string players in key games so that they get exposure for later in the season if injuries occur, because a lot of these big programs, they're hopefully going to be vying for the national championship. You want to have some depth at different positions.
Okay, so what we're hearing is a lot of teams, especially dominant teams, are not going to be playing their starters the whole time. And there's a second factor, which is they're going to be vanilla. They're going to have their playbook. The game planning is going to be as simple as possible because they can line up simply and still win these games. So the performance is going to be, most likely for the best teams, they're going to underperform a little bit, which makes you want to fade them in the right spots. I think look to fade the marquee teams early, laying 30, 35 points because of the vanilla factor, because of the second string factor. But it also calls into question the stats from those first couple games. So when you get to game 4 and game 5, you really got to question those stats. You might have an average team that has a winning by 15 points a game, getting 400 yards, 500 yards a game. So unless you're really good at adjustments for strength of schedule, you got to be very careful about stats early in the year.
I couldn't have said it better, sir.
Well, you whispered it to me before we started. All right, really good stuff. Now it's your turn. Continue the conversation in the comments section, and Marco and I will reply to whatever you post. And and we'll be back. Now this is a tease for a month or so from now. We're going to be back in early October. And we're going to be talking about mid-season. We'll do another How to Handicap, mid-season college football handicapping.